The next hero that I've painted is Morrigan from a Zombicide Black Plague. She's one of the heroes from the big box expansion Wulfsburg. Let me first show you my painted miniature. Before I started painting this miniature, I looked at the artwork and I have to admit I had no idea how I would paint this miniature. Normally I start always with the skin because I like it that you have the skin with the color you like and then you paint everything else, but not with this miniature. I looked at the skin tone in the artwork and I was like, how do I paint this? How does somebody actually paint a skin tone like this? So I was not sure, do I want to go more of a gray color or maybe more like a purple or more of a dead skin? Is she alive? Like, because she has this really bright white bluish hair, and then this, I went actually with a grayish color. So I started, instead of the skin, with like other parts of the miniature that I was more sure, not so sure, but more sure of how I would paint that. And after painting more and more areas, I figured out more colors to go with that, and then eventually I chose a color for the skin. And I was a bit scared of the skin tone, but I pulled it off and I do like it now. I'm happy that I painted this miniature because this was really like out of my comfort zone. The skin tone is different, the colors are like all more dark, so I didn't really want to go with something really bright or highlight too much. So at the end, I really like the result and I did learn a lot from this miniature. Now let's paint. I primed the miniature in the color Standard Grey from Citadel. Before I primed the miniature, I washed it with warm water and dishwasher soap to make sure the primer stays on well. For the cape, I used the colors Petroleum Grey from scale 75 with Prussian Blue from Vallejo. I'll mix these colors with a 50-50 ratio, so 1 drop of Petroleum Grey mixed with 1 drop of Prussian Blue. For the boots, the belt on her top and the fabric hanging from the other belt, I will use Petroleum Grey. I'm going to use different kind of dark colors on the miniature, just to give the different parts a bit more depth instead of giving them all the same color. For her top, belt on her waist and the pouches, I will use the colors Petroleum Grey with Royal Purple from Vallejo. I'll mix these colors with a 2:1 ratio of 2 drops of Royal Purple with 1 drop of Petroleum Grey. For the bracers, fabric under her top and the fabric in front of her left leg, I use the colors Ardennes Green from scale 75 with black from Vallejo. I'll mix in just a little bit of black with the green color. The color can darken too much really fast. Make sure when you're mixing these colors to not use too much black at once. For the pants and sleeves, I use the colors Necrotic Flesh from the Army Painter with Goblin Green and black from Vallejo. The main color that I will use is Goblin Green. To that color, I will first mix in just a little bit of black, just to darken the green color, and after that I will mix in just a little bit of Necrotic Flesh. This may look like a strange combination, but with the black I will just darken the green color just a little bit. And then with the Necrotic Flesh I will just tone down the green color to a softer green color. Now for finally the skin, I will use the colors Brown Sand with Gold Grey from Vallejo. I'll mix these colors in a ratio of 2:1, of 2 drops of Gold Grey with 1 drop of Brown Sand. I'll paint her face and hands with this color, Oh, and also don't forget to paint her little cute ears with this color. For the hair I use the colors Wolf Grey with Bonewhite from Vallejo. I'll mix these colors with a 50-50 ratio. I'll go for a white color with some subtle blue in it. The Wolf Grey will already help a bit with the blue color in the white. For the dagger I will use the color Black Red from Vallejo. And for some details I will use the color Bonewhite. I will use the color Bonewhite for the mask, the bones on her top and the stripes of the boots. I will use the color Black Red for the holder that the dagger is in. For the hilt of the sword and dagger in her hand, I will use the color Polished Gold. For the blades of the sword and dagger, shoulder pads, buckles and the dagger on her belt, I will use the color Chainmail Silver. All the base colors have been applied to the miniature. The next step is to shade. For the skin, I will use non-oil with Reikland Flesh Shade from Citadel. I will use a mix of 2 drops of non-oil with 1 drop of Reikland Flesh Shade. For the hair, I will use Drakenhof Nightshade with non-oil with a 1:1 ratio, and I will also add in 1 drop of water with that. For the rest of the miniature, I will use non-oil. For the light green areas, so the pants and sleeves and the skull, I will mix in a 50-50 of non-oil with water. For all the other areas, I will use non-oil straight out of a bottle. Now that the shade has been applied, it is time to bring back those colors and to do some highlights. For the hair, I will use Gulliman Blue Glaze from Citadel and Wolf Grey. I'll first apply a thin layer of the Gulliman Blue. After that, I will apply Wolf Grey, but only to the upper parts of the hair. If I would apply the glaze after the Wolf Grey, it will tone down the bright white color a lot, and the hair might be too blue. To apply the glaze first will give the hair a subtle blue color. For the cape, I use Petroleum Grey with Prussian Blue and Off-White. I will start with a 50-50 mix of Petroleum Grey with Prussian Blue. I'll focus on the upper parts. The parts I leave with the darker color is a bit more than I otherwise would do. I want the cape to have a darker color overall. For the second layer, I'll mix in a little bit of Off-White and start to make the areas I paint smaller. Then for the final highlight, I will mix in a bit more Off-White and focus on the most raised parts and the edges. For her top, belt on her waist and the pouches, I will use Petroleum Grey with Royal Purple. I will use a 50-50 mix of these colors. I will focus on the raised parts to bring back this color a bit. If you want, you can also add in a bit of Off-White to do some more highlighting. I will not do that. For the bracers, fabric under her top and the fabric in front of her left leg, I use the colors Ardennes Green with Black and Off-White. Here I will start with Ardennes Green and mix in just a little bit of black again. Then I will do 2 more highlight layers. Every time I will mix in a little bit of Off-White to the color. For the pants and sleeves, I use the colors Necrotic Flash with Goblin Green and Black. I will use the same mix as I did with the base color. So I'll first get some Goblin Green, I'll mix in a little bit of black just to darken the green color, and after that I'll mix in a little bit of Necrotic Flash. I'll paint the raised areas with this color with a very thin coat. For the skin, I will use Gold Grey with Brown Sand, and for the eyes I will use Off-White. I'll mix 2 drops of Gold Grey with 1 drop of Brown Sand. I'll paint the nose, forehead, cheeks, lips and raised areas of the hands with this color. After that, I will use the color Off-White to paint the eyes. For the gold and metal parts, I use the colors Polished Gold, Chainmail Silver and Silver from Vallejo. I'll first paint a thin layer of the color polished gold on the sword and dagger grips inner hands. Then I'll first use Chainmail silver to paint a thin layer on all the metal parts. I finish by applying a thin layer of silver to one side of the blades of the sword and dagger inner hand, and to paint the pommel of the dagger on her belt. For the base, I will first use the color Star Brown with Mojave White from scale 75. I will use a 50-50 mix of these colors to paint the whole base. After that, I will use the color Brown Gray from scale 75 to paint the patterns of the stones on the base. I'll paint 5 stones with the colors High Key Yellow from scale 75 and Off-White. I finish off the base to paint the side of the base in the color Arbuckle Brown from scale 75. After letting the miniature dry for at least 24 hours, I'll apply Quick Shade in the color Strong Tone from the Army Painter on the base. After letting the Quick Shade dry for at least 48 hours, I use the Anti-Shine Matte Varnish from the Army Painter. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. From what miniature did you learn a lot while painting it? Was it a different miniature than you've painted so far? Let me know.